Hi everyone, welcome back to Mem Tea. I'm Sue Ann and I'm here again to talk about the 3 teas that we're featuring in our subscription box. The month of June we are featuring a white tea from China called Bai Mudan or white peony. We have a green tea from Japan called Kukicha and a first flush Darjeeling from the Goomtee Estate. So this white tea, Bai Mudan, it calls for 3 heaping teaspoons, 175 degrees for 4 minutes. And that's if we're going to use a teapot and brew it Western style. But if we wanted to use a gaiwan and make it Gong Fu style, really you don't have to be as accurate with your measurements. You can try to put those 3 heaping teaspoons in the gaiwan, but you can see how lanky these leaves are. It gets kind of difficult to add them to the spoon, but there's 3 teaspoons. So instead of doing the full 4-minute steep with this, I can use my 175 degree water, but do less time and do multiple steeps. So that's my plan. Also then I get to see the leaves unfurling, floating through, you can see them floating through the water. They resemble the petals of a peony flower, which is how this tea got its name. Many Chinese teas are named for the leaf appearance or appeal. So they have more sort of romanticized descriptions or names than some of the black teas from India. Are just named after the place or the estate, like the Goomtee is the garden where that Darjeeling comes from. So with this tea we can go rather quickly if we want. The gaiwan means covered bowl. It comes with a saucer, a bowl, and a lid, and the lid helps steep the tea. It helps agitate the tea, but it also strains the tea leaves, so it's going to keep the tea in the gaiwan while the liqueur comes out. And you can see this is already fairly golden in color, so we're getting some extraction here. The aromas coming through. You often get a really nice capture of the aroma on the lid of the gaiwan, which is nice. Usually it's not covered with leaves, but so I'm going to give this a whirl and see what we have. White tea, because of the minimal processing, tends to be somewhat herbaceous. Imagine picking some herbs from your garden and drying them out in the sunshine. You get kind of this slightly earthy flowers like chrysanthemum, linden flower. This one has kind of a nice honey note to it that is commonly found in linden, and it really makes for great Gong Fu tea brewing, as well as, like I said, the teapot brewing. But this really reminds me of those flowers, which is uncanny. So nice white tea. I look forward to hearing how you like it. So next we have Kukicha. So Kukicha is a twig tea from Japan. Oftentimes Kukicha would be made from bancha, but this is a sencha, which means it's an early spring tea. So the harvest is still from the springtime, but the stems, some of the stems are included in this lot. So this is stem and twig and leaf from the spring harvest, and you can see the lighter flecks are the stems of the plant, and the darker leaves are there as well. So there's a little of both. So we're going to have some of the grassiness of Essentia, and then a little bit of that toasted nuttiness of twig tea or Kukicha. So I'm just going to fill this halfway. I just put 1 teaspoon in, and this is a kyusu, or means side handle teapot. So this is a classic Japanese teapot. It has a really fine mesh screen inside, which is great for straining out the really fine leaves of Japanese tea. The benefit of Kukicha would be that it's going to be a little bit lower in caffeine than the sencha. As you go lower on the plant, so there's the new leaves of the plant, the bud, the first leaf, the second leaf, and then the stem. And so as you go lower down on the stem of the plant, the caffeine gets diluted. So there will be less caffeine, if any, in the stem, whereas a lot in the tip of the tea. So this really doesn't need a long steep time. And also, again, if you didn't have 175 degree water, you could add a splash of cold water to this before adding the hot, and that would reduce. Oh, it's got a really nice nutty aroma to it. This is a sharing pitcher, so I wanted to make sure that I poured all of the tea, all of the water out of this vessel, because any remaining water will continue to steep the tea leaves, and that's the same. So this is something that I will steep again. So I want to make sure that there's no more water in there, and that's what the sharing pitcher is good for, getting all of the tea out of this at once. If I didn't have a sharing pitcher, I could also just share the tea between these 2 cups, but you would want to go back and forth to make sure that each cup had the same sort of extraction of tea. So the nice thing about the sharing pitcher is that it's going to mix the tea to make sure, sometimes they refer to this as a fairness pitcher as well, and make sure that my cup and your cup are the same flavor and same strength, which is grassy, nutty, toasty. Really a lot going on in this tea because of the combination of stems and leaf, and you don't really need to steep it for very long. It has a nice sweetness to it, creamy mouthfeel, really enjoyable green tea from Japan. So finally we have the Darjeeling First Flush from the Goomtee Estate. We have right now, I want to say about 4 different estates of First Flush Darjeelings and several Second Flush Darjeelings, and even an autumnal. And the flush, what the flush is referring to, I'm going to brew this actually in this in-mug infuser with this in-mug infuser using 1 level teaspoon of tea, 195 degrees, in 2 to 3 minutes. It's often categorized as black tea, but the first flush is really not oxidized very much at all. So when you examine the leaves, you'll see that they look fairly green. And this is intentional. They really want this tea to shine. They want to highlight those spring flavors. The first flush is the first picking of the season. So this is a spring tea, spring 2021. It was picked in April. And the climate is still very cool in Darjeeling. It's high elevation, 3,000 to 6,000 feet. And the temperatures are still pretty cool, like in the 50s. And there's not as much sunlight as there will be in the summertime. So the leaves tend to grow. The first flush is just the new buds that are appearing on the bushes. And They grow slowly, so they have more time to develop complexity of character. So the first flush is usually the most prized in Darjeeling. I also, while that's steeping, I want to show you, I made a cold brew with it. Basically, I took 2 teaspoons of level teaspoons of tea, and I put them in this 8-ounce jar with cold water, and I put it in the refrigerator for 1 hour. So that's how fast you can make cold brew tea with Darjeeling. And it's because the leaf is fairly small and also rather assertive. You can see that nice golden hue. So I just strain out the leaves, and voila, we've got a nice chilled tea that I guess I'll drink right from the jar because it's a small jar and I can handle it. So cold brewing, this is really kind of intense. It's got a lot of body, and this is something that is now strong enough. I'm getting all of the flavors that I will hopefully in this hot version, but with a cold extraction, so it's already chilled. Ooh. Which means that I don't have to put it over ice, and it's strong, so I can either pour it over ice or dilute it. And here we have the hot version. It's not as strong. This was only 1 teaspoon for all of this hot water. And still very fragrant, floral, fruity, a little spicy. They call Darjeeling the champagne of teas because of this cup. The color is, really golden, clear, crisp, bright, floral, fruity. It has everything going on right now. And this is very different from the second flush Darjeeling, which is picked later in the summer and also looks a lot more like black tea because it has more of that oxidation. So those are the 3 teas we have this month. First flush Darjeeling, hot or cold, the weather's warming up, so try it either way. The green Kukicha, I would also try as a cold brew. Do the same thing, 2 teaspoons in the fridge for 1 hour. See what you think of that. White peony, same thing. That would take longer to extract. It doesn't have as much astringency as this tea does, so you could even leave the white peony in overnight if you wanted to do a cold brew. But play around with them, and if you come up with any great ideas for making iced beverages or cocktails or any sort of recipes, feel free to post them on social media. We'll love them because we love them. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. And in the meantime, bon appetit.